Welcome to Bathrooms and Bunkers, powered by Lean Solutions Group. The Bathrooms and Bunkers podcast is dedicated to telling the stories of excellence from extraordinary people around the globe. I'm Trey Griggs, Vice President of Lean Sales, and today I'm excited to be joined by my good friend, Kevin Tinter. Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Hey Trey, thanks. It's great to be here.
So Kevin, I want to start by kind of asking a unique question, and that is, if you had to describe to somebody what you do today, how would you describe that?
I'll answer that in just a second, but you invited me to be on this podcast, Bathrooms and Bunkers. Where'd the name come from? It's very catchy.
I've heard that question a few times. So I was actually with a client having dinner, and he was telling me about visiting his warehouses and how, everybody would get the entire place cleaned up, and he would walk right past that in order to see the bathroom, to see if somebody actually took the time to clean the bathroom, and that would show him whether or not that they really went to the nth degree. And he would make a point, if it wasn't clean, to kind of reprimand that employee, potentially even fire that employee, to make a point that no matter what you did in that company, it was with excellence. And it got me thinking about an experience that I had in life. My first job out of high school was for a grounds crew at a local golf course. And it was a really nice golf course, a country club. They had a PGA Tour event there every summer, and so it was pristine. And my very first day, they gave me a bunker rake, and they made me walk the entire course. And I had to walk behind the bunker rake machine. So there's a machine that goes into the sand trap, rakes up the sand trap, and then I had to come with my rake and manicure the edges really nice on all 82 bunkers. And I counted every one of them. And so they said if I couldn't do that very well, they couldn't trust me to mow tees, to mow greens. And so it was like my tryout. And so we got this idea of we were just sitting around the table going, bathrooms and bunkers, who would have thought? And so that idea just spurred that as we want to talk about these stories of excellence, that really captured it. And it's kind of a fun, catchy name. So that's what we went with.
Awesome. I love it.
All right. So answer the question for me. How would you describe what you do every day?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been wrestling with that for about 9.5 years because I've been doing what I do currently professionally for about that long. I would say it's kind of two-faceted. We help people get healthy physically, mentally, and in their relationships. The entry point for the majority of the clients that we assist is physical health. Most of our clients want to lose weight. And what we know is that if people just focus on solving a problem, they're most likely going to go back to their old habits. And then they may lose the weight, but it's going to come back and they'll go back to their old habits. So what we focus on is helping people get to a healthy weight by making lifestyle adjustments and by making small improvements in their daily habits that will set them up for long-term success. So that's one piece of what we do. And the second thing we do is we're essentially a home-based business type of model that is very unique from anything else I'm aware of and anything else that my wife has been involved in prior to this. And what we really enjoy doing is helping other people build their own version of a health coaching practice. We have some great systems in place, and we personally, my big, hairy, audacious goal is to actually help 15 separate lines of business generate 6-figure monthly incomes. So it's going to take me a few more years to get there, but it's a phenomenal model that is incredibly effective at helping people get healthy, and therefore it, in many ways, it's very organic.
So essentially, kind of a health coach, a personal coach, a business coach, kind of all wrapped up into one.
Exactly. And I am still wrestling. I've been through the whole Don Miller story brand process, and I am still wrestling with my elevator pitch. So when someone says, just like you did, what do you do? That I have a good answer for them, because I still don't.
Nice. Now you do this with your wife, Becca.
Yes.
What are the advantages of working with your wife every day on a business together?
Well, are there kids watching and listening to this podcast?
Might be, probably not, but
all right. Well, if they are, put them away. We jokingly call them business meetings. But, when you love your spouse and you get along with them, it's really fun to do something together. Shared vision, a shared mission, instead of us talking about, my day at work and just kind of unloading on my wife, and then she telling me about her day at home with the kids. We work together. A lot of people think, oh, you're spending, 8 hours a day side by side. Nothing could be further from the truth. But we have a common mission, and we have figured out kind of how to divide labor so that we're, for the most part, focused in our areas of strength. And that common mission, that common vision, sense of purpose of working together, I think really strengthens our relationship, although it does test it at times.
So in short, though, you have the best business meetings of anybody.
Exactly.
That's the point we'll take away.
What I've jokingly said, well, it's actually not a joke, it's actually true. I can sleep with my boss and the HR department doesn't care. So.
Nice, yeah. So we'll just leave that right there. So I want to come back to that in a little bit, talk about your business and some philosophies. But before that, I want to talk a little bit or hear a little bit about your background. I met you in Portland about 10 years ago, but prior to that, you grew up in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And I grew up a Cleveland sports fan, so you must be excited at the recording of this that the Browns are in the playoffs.
Yes.
Are you going to make a prediction right now about how far the Browns will go?
I love the Browns. I've shed many tears, the drive, the fumble. But I'm also a realistic fan. I mean, let's face it, the Browns won by 2 points against a team that wasn't starting their starting quarterback. So I'm hopeful, but I would not put any money on my.
So anything from this point on is kind of cherry on top at this point.
The fact that we made it to the playoffs, it's a good season already. So
yeah, that's awesome. Now, what is it like growing up as a Cleveland sports fan and the droughts that you guys have experienced, not just with the Browns, but all over? Like, what does that really build into a person when they have loyalty to teams that just aren't winning?
Loyalty is one of those things. Resilience, it really prepares you for life. Being a Cleveland sports fan. I was always faithful and loyal. I never jumped on the bandwagon of any of the other teams. And it honestly kind of creates this, you look down on people who are from Cleveland, but like the Dallas Cowboys or the LA Lakers, or, they're from somewhere and they've got a local team to root for, but they love XY team because they were making the NBA playoffs or the World Series or the Super Bowl. Everyone's a New England Patriots fan. And it's like, come on, unless you're from there, there's no reason for it. So.
Yeah. So Cleveland residents actually have a leg up on everybody else because they got to learn perseverance, loyalty,
absolutely,
suffering.
Absolutely. And a little, self-deprecating humor as well. So
awesome. But you're also an Ohio State Buckeyes fan.
Go Bucks.
So that, makes up for it.
That is the one thing we have keeping us all from just going to complete depression when it comes to sports.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your childhood growing up. What lessons did you learn from your parents growing up that you kind of still keep with you today? What was that like?
Yeah. So I grew up in the 80s. I was born in 77. So we grew up in a single income family. My dad was the sole breadwinner. My mom stayed at home with us. I had 3 younger brothers. Started off my school career in public school. My dad was primarily a public school teacher. But when he started his career in middle school, he's like, I am not going to have my kids go to public middle school. I don't know what options there's going to be, but it's not going to be public middle school. So 4th grade, I went to a small private school. 5th grade through 10th grade, I was homeschooled by my mother. And then 11th and 12th grade, I went back to a private school to finish out my career at my request. So when I was homeschooled, it was a very fringe type of way of educating your children. I remember being in the background of many conversations that my dad had, especially with people like, your kids, how are they going to be socialized? And they're going to be weirdos and things like that. All 3 of my brothers and myself are either entrepreneurial. 3 of the 4 of us are exclusively self-employed and very successful, and we've all done well socially. So I think like anything, you can find the outliers and try to create a mold and say that everyone's going to fit into that, but that was not the case for us. As far as lessons learned, my mom was the one who kept our family within a budget, and so I saw her every single month trying to manage my dad's lack of budgeting and finding a way for us to survive. There was almost never any extra, but I learned how to be thrifty and to live within my means by watching my mom. My dad, on the other hand, was a full-time music teacher. He was also a professional photographer. And so whether it was photographing weddings on Saturday nights or doing, sports leagues in the summer, what he showed me is that you always have to find a way. Or if you're willing to do the work, there's a way to provide for your family and to provide for yourself.
So your dad had the side hustle going on, a photography business. And he and I have a lot in common because I used to be a middle school teacher who I also told my wife, our kids are not going to middle school. So
yes.
we would probably get along quite well,
yeah.
which is good. So you grew up in the 80s.
Yep.
I remember today out on the boat when we were driving around, you had a playlist going on. What's on your 80s playlist? What are the best songs from the 80s?
The best decade of music. It's phenomenal.
Clearly,
Van Halen.
Clearly.
Boston, I love Ozzy, AC/DC, Poison, all the hair bands. That stuff is right up my alley. Plus, I love the good 80s pop music.
Yeah. Now, is that the influence and the inspiration for having the longer hair now? Because I know when we met, you had shorter hair,
yes.
and today it was blowing in the breeze on the boat, listening to music.
Yeah. So, I figured out right after high school that I wanted to be a police officer, and I always had an interest in the military. So, I kind of adopted the hairstyle back then, and then ended up going into the Marine Corps right out of college, and then became a police officer. So at the end of 2016, after being self-employed for quite a few years, I had this epiphany of, why is my hair still short? Like, I can have whatever I want. So this is round 2. My wife begs me almost every single day to cut it. She actually hates this. And I'm holding my ground right now and saying, I haven't ever had it as long as I want it to be. So I'm going to keep going with it. And that's the beautiful thing about being self-employed, is I no longer have to, follow dress codes and, hair regulations.
Plus, if you find yourself in a karaoke bar, you can jump on stage and do a nice Van Halen with the hair, and it works perfectly.
Headbanging looks a lot better with some hair.
That's for sure. So I want to transition for just a minute. I want to talk about your experience in the military as a police officer, and some of those experiences, some of the people that you met along the way who've really made a difference, made an impact in your life. Who are some of those people that you had as mentors, or that you studied under or worked under, that really impacted your life and the way you think?
Yeah, so I've been blessed to have a couple of really good bosses and mentors along the way. One was a good friend of mine. His name is Bob Gibson. He was a Cleveland fireman, and he hired me when I was in late high school, early college, and did just all kinds of different construction type activities. So I learned a lot of skills from him. But what he taught me, once again, was work ethic. Like, I remember carrying 2x4s with him, and as a lazy high schooler, picking up 1, maybe 2 2x4s, and him saying, hold on a second, and him stacking like 4 more 2x4s on me. And it's like, okay, I can do this. And I think we're naturally lazy. And so having someone like that can push you and show you, hey, you're capable of doing more, and you should, is a good thing. So Bob had a huge influence on me. After Beck and I got married, I did construction again, worked for a great guy named Ben Slothauer. And kind of the same thing. My skill set had evolved enough to where I could do some like project management on my own, and nothing of major scale. But I remember really appreciating how he trusted me to do things, and even things that I felt were a little bit outside of my comfort level and maybe even my skill level. He just kind of trusted me. And what that did was it built confidence for me. When I move on to the Marine Corps, the most impactful leader that I had was Lieutenant Colonel Rob Cossid. He unfortunately passed away from cancer about 8 or 9 years ago. So he's a special guy to me, but he was by far the best Marine that I ever worked for. He trusted me. I've never had anyone I could have screwed him big time, and he would have paid the price for it. But I came in to a position that I had no experience in. He basically empowered me to do what I needed to do to run my crew the way that I needed to. And he trusted me. And I just reported to him on a more or less daily basis. And it allowed me, as I'm very much an individualistic type of person. I like to be independent. Very weird fit for someone who's in the Marine Corps. But it really allowed me to thrive, and it was the most satisfying 9 months of my Marine Corps career. So Rob Cossid really taught me what true leadership is all about. Then I move on to my law enforcement career. I think of Sergeant Alex O, same type of thing, very not a micromanager, trusted me to do my job, found the balance between being my leader and also having that personal relationship. And then the other one is Lieutenant Rich Gerling, who also retired from the Coast Guard. But when I first started working at the police department, I believe he was a sergeant, maybe already a lieutenant. But the same type of thing, he would show up when I was at a call and just have conversations with me, and never ever micromanaged, and just really to me was exemplified what a leader is all about. And through my experience in law enforcement especially, I realized that I think that leadership is one of the most scarce resources that we have in this country, hands down.
Yeah. So how about recently? Because you've been out of the law enforcement for how long now?
January of 2013 was so almost 8 years I've been officially out.
Okay. So who in the last 7 years has kind of taken that mantle of being a mentor to you and helping you out?
Yeah. So honestly, it sounds a little bit weird, but my wife is definitely at the top of that list. She is the one who had a vision for our health coaching business that I had no interest in initially, but she wanted to do something that would contribute to our financial, our home finances, wanted to do something. She's a great mother. She loves being a mother, but also wanted to have that adult interaction and be able to impact adults as well. And she is a phenomenal leader. I tell people all the time, and I believe it's true, she's in our industry, she's one of the top leaders for sure. People want to get trained by her, and she's phenomenal. My good friend Doug Wood is also probably one of my top mentors and friends, and also a great leader in our business. Doug is an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. When I met him, this was a side hustle. What we do was a side hustle for him. He owned furniture stores in the Portland area. And he and his wife, Tia, always thought big. They owned boats and cars that now I realize were probably a little bit outside of what they could afford. But it was because they had this abundant mentality, and they just weren't in the right structure for it all to make sense. But eventually, as they moved into the business model that we're in, it started to make sense. And what they taught me is just to have this abundance mentality that especially capitalism, the American economy is not a zero-sum game. That it's not a one pie that we're all trying to share. We can go make as many pies as we want. And Doug and Tia really taught me that by outsourcing, delegating things that cost them money, whether it was hiring a nanny, an assistant. They would invite people. Like I remember going on a ski trip with them when we didn't have a lot of extra money. And so it made it possible for us to say yes. And it exposed me to what their life was like in the health coaching industry. So I would say my wife and Doug specifically, but he and his wife Tia are probably two of the most profound.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now we want to shift a little bit to your secret sauce. You just mentioned abundant mentality. We talked about it out on the boat today about the mentality that people have and their mindset. How significant is it for somebody to really experience great levels of success, to pursue excellence, and have the right mind to do so?
Man, I think that's the game changer. When I look back at even when I came into this business with my wife, she hit success, like she exceeded her initial goals by about 350% within 4 months. And what that did was it allowed me I made this decision. I'm no longer working overtime at the police department. I'm going to focus my overtime hours into helping my wife build the business. And eventually it really developed into a passion for me, which is why I eventually left law enforcement. But even then, I used to always think about things from a cost perspective. Like, what is this going to cost me? And I'm going to do this myself, whether it's, changing oil, cut the grass, because I'm saving money. And what Doug and Tia specifically, what their example showed me, and some of the other mentors we have that are very abundant minded, was that it's not about cost, it's about investing. And it's about this abundance mentality of, wait a minute, when I hire someone else to do something that they're really good at, number one, I'm investing in them. I'm letting them work in their greatness. And I'm able to focus on my greatness. And I'm able to spend my time either doing things that make me the most money or that are worth the most to me. And so that specifically is spending time with my kids. At the house that we used to live at down the road here in Arizona, had a handyman that basically, I joke he was on retainer. Because with 3 boys and a young daughter, our house is getting destroyed on a regular basis. So he spent, every other month he was coming over to fix stuff. And many times he would be there either fixing something or putting something together for me while I was playing with my kids. And he commented on the fact, I think it's really cool. On the one hand, you feel awkward. You're like, there's this guy at my house doing something that I'm fully capable of doing. But on the flip side is he saw that and he appreciated the fact that I was spending time with my kids, number one. And number two, I'm paying him to do it. He does to make a living to do it. So that's that abundance mentality of just realizing that there's no limit, that we set the limit on ourselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know that I've heard you say this before, but one of your favorite things is being able to help dads come home.
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about that and what the pleasure and the benefit has been for you since you've come home from working in the police department. So
my typical routine when I was a police officer, and we did not live, you saw my old house. That was, we had a $1,300 a month mortgage, which was very much within our budget back then. We had zero credit card debt. We owned 2 vehicles. They were both paid for. So we lived within our means. We didn't take vacations. Our annual vacation was flying back to Cleveland to see my parents, which is great, but it's also not a vacation per se. So my normal routine was I worked my 40 hours a week, but then I also worked quite a bit of overtime. Many times it meant coming home, taking a short nap, going back to work at somewhere between 9 o'clock and 1 o'clock, working until either 4 o'clock or, typically 4 o'clock in the morning, coming home, taking another short nap, and then going back to work at 6 o'clock. That was my Wednesday through Saturday schedule. And what I realized is we were getting by, but even though I had a 3-day weekend, I was working overtime on those weekends. And most of the holidays that I spent with my family was my wife swinging through a parking lot in the city that I worked in to say hi on 4th of July or Christmas so that they could go be with my wife's family. And I was at work. And then, I would either spend, the leftovers at the end of the day, or if I was on night shift, spend the morning with them. But I missed out on so much of life, missed out on everything that happened on Fridays and Saturdays because I worked those days. So when I saw the potential of being self-employed and got to the point where we could afford, basically maintain our current standard of living for me to come home. And when I gave my 2 weeks notice to the boss, the chief, he really tried very hard to convince me to stick around for an extra couple months. And I said, you know what, Chief, I have an opportunity to come home and be a stay-at-home dad. I still work, but I'm going to be at home with my kids. I will never regret this opportunity. It might be for just 1 year. It could be for the rest of my life. I don't know. But I know that when I'm on my deathbed, I'm never going to regret taking this opportunity. And it has been such a blessing that is one of my missions, is to help as many dads come home and be able to be stay-at-home fathers in their own version of what I get to do with my kids. So what was a better moment, you resigning and getting to come home, or every time that you hear that one of your business partners gets to do that? Oh, man. I think, honestly, when I hear of whether it's a mom or a dad, when I find out that they've quit their job, many times it's planned in ahead, so I know many times we're helping them work towards a specific goal. But as awesome as it was for me to be able to quit, I enjoy it even more, being able to pay it forward and help others do the same thing. Yeah, I can imagine. It's almost like when your kids do something really great or whatever, that feeling of pride and of happiness and joy for that person often trumps the experience that you have. It really does. Yeah, that's really cool. So we're going to take a quick moment and switch over to what we call the quick 10. Alrighty. So we're going to throw out 10 random questions real quick and just get your feedback. You haven't seen these questions yet, so we'll just see what comes out of your mouth. First question is, what's your favorite car? Corvette. What year? 1980 to 1982, but I own a 79. Nice. That's beautiful. Second question, name one thing that is on your bucket list. Australia. Australia. Yes. Visiting for long-term, short-term, just a vacation? Long-term. Long-term. Yes. Very cool. Years? Months? Oh, no. Probably 3 months? Couple weeks. Okay. To maybe a month, depending on if my kids are still at home or not. If you're going to fly 20 hours, you might as well stay for a while. Exactly. That's for sure. Okay, next question. What do you collect? Are you a collector? And if so, what do you collect? I love firearms and I love guitars. Excellent. Where did you take your wife on your last date? Was it last night? Last night we went to Chop Chandler, a locally owned steak and burger bar. Nice. Are you more likely to write a book or to record an album? I would love to record an album, but I'm more likely to write a book. Nice. Next question. Best gift you've ever been given? think about this one. My wife is a really good gift giver. The fact that I can't think of one right off the top of my head. But honestly, I'm going to go back to I believe it was my first year of college. My parents bought me a 1992 Honda Accord. It was used with very little mileage. I paid for my college education, but they gave me that car and they said, this is our way of supporting you. You've been a great son. You've been a great student. This is how we're going to support you so you can commute to and from school and work. So that was a life-changing gift.
That's cool. That's a really great gift. Next question. If you could live in any city that you have not previously lived in, what would it be?
Gosh, I love Phoenix so much. Like a suburb of Phoenix. Honestly, I tell people.
Tucson.
Yeah, I mean, maybe something similar to where we live, Chandler Gilbert right now. Gosh, honestly, if you gave me a house anywhere else in the world, I would turn it down to stay here.
Wow.
So
I love it. Conviction.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
So pick some other suburb of Phoenix, and that's where I go.
Pick somewhere else. Surprise or something like that. Very good. Okay. Question 8. One last sporting event that you get to attend. What is it?
Cleveland Browns Super Bowl victory.
Maybe this year they have a shot. They're in at least.
They
you
have a
never
shot.
know. We're not going to predict that, but you never know. All right. Question 9. Favorite form of vacation?
Beach, relax, do nothing.
All right. Last question.
Except play golf.
Yeah, there you go. I like that. Last question. Last meal you can ever have. What is it?
It is a filet mignon from Mastro's Steakhouse in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Well, I love the filet. I've never been there. I'm going to have to try that out because
it's
I
my
love
favorite
filet.
restaurant. Yeah, especially if it can come with everything.
Nice. We have to hit that tonight. We'll see what happens with
Yeah.
that. So I want to go back to one thing real quick we talked about earlier. We kind of referenced it, and that is the boat. So you guys have a boat that you go out to a beautiful place. We got to go out there today.
Yeah.
What does that do for you going out there? That's got to be a part of your secret sauce a little bit of what helps you kind of maintain focus, maintain balance. What do you love about being out on the boat?
Yeah, I think it's really important for everyone to have something, an activity, a hobby that refuels them. It's hard to pour out into others when your cup is empty. And what my wife and I do professionally is very relationally intense. We've got 4 kids ranging from 3.5 years to 13 years. Parenting is brutal from a relationship standpoint. I mean, it just takes a lot of emotion, and it does wear you out. It's a huge blessing, but it's exhausting. So for me, the boat is a place when I'm either by myself or just with friends. It fills me up. It's peaceful. From a family standpoint, one of the reasons we chose to make the investment, not from a financial standpoint, but from a memory and relational standpoint, is that every family that I know that had a boat just talks about the incredible memories, and their kids, when they grow up, they're like, so glad, Mom and Dad, that you spent the money on that because some of my best memories are there. So with our oldest son being 13, we decided, that circumstances presented themselves for us to get a great deal on a good used boat. Time is leaving us, right? We literally, my wife and I, a couple of years ago, talked about the fact that we only have 8 more summers before our oldest son potentially moves out or goes on to college or joins the military or something like that. And realizing that, it's now or never. So, and I just love the fact that when I'm on the boat, all my kids do is smile. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Plus, now that your hair is long, it just blows through the wind.
I got to be honest with you. I do like to look in the mirror and see my hair blowing back. It's pretty. It fills my ego.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So I want to end talking about the next chapter, where you're headed from here. When you think about the word legacy, what kind of legacy are you trying to leave for your family, or build or create for your family?
Well, when my wife and I talk about ultimately what we want our kids to have or to do or to be, it really has nothing to do with finances, other than the standpoint we want them to be good stewards of what they have. But we don't necessarily, our goal isn't for them to all be rich. We want them to be good people that care about others, that are willing to invest in, take care of others, and really sacrifice for others, and make the world a better place. And that's going to look like something different for each of our kids. We tell them all the time, like, if you're a garbage man, we're cool with that, because we're really grateful for garbage men. They keep our house and our city clean. And if that's what you end up enjoying and if that's what you're good at and that's what you're called to do, then go do it and be the best dang garbage man that's out there. So we also want to teach our kids absolutely patriotism is a huge value for us, to never take this country for granted. The fact that many people have made significant sacrifices over the last several hundred years to give us the freedoms that we have that are really one of a kind in the course of human history. I don't think anything's been experienced the way that American freedom has been experienced. And we want to teach our kids, to carry on the faith and make it their own. That's something that's core to my wife and I, and to make the world a better place.
Yeah, that's cool. We talked a little bit today actually about the idea of freedom in our country that we have, and it was interesting that we both kind of noted that in the last 50 years, Americans really haven't had to fight for their freedom like in the past, and it really the fight is to not take it for granted.
Right, absolutely. No, we have conversations like that on a regular basis with my kids, especially one child more than others, it's challenging. Sometimes I think it's just obnoxious teenagerhood, but we definitely try to talk about the fact of the sacrifices that are made by service members and first responders. Even if it's as simple as it's Christmas Day. I used to be gone almost every single Christmas day, and I'm now here with you. But just because I'm here with you doesn't mean that there aren't other moms and dads that are away from their kids.
Yeah, that's cool. It's a great legacy to leave for sure. So I want to know, are you a goal setter that thinks of long-term goals? Do you think of a year at a time, 5 years at a time, 10 years? How do you guys approach goals, and what are you hoping to accomplish here in the next decade?
Man, goals setting is something that I did not implement in my life until I got involved in this business with my wife. But as soon as I started to see a glimpse of the potential, I realized that I needed to change who I was and how I did things to get to where I wanted to go. I saw the potential, but I knew that I could also not be able to take full advantage of it. So one of my favorite virtual mentors is Dave Ramsey. I love Financial Peace University. Follow the majority of his financial philosophy. I love his EntreLeadership brand that teaches that ultimately we're all entrepreneurs, whether you're flipping burgers at, In-N-Out or you own your own business, ultimately we're all our own entrepreneurs. And I heard these people, these leaders talk about goal setting. And so I was like, this is probably something I should do. So it started with something as simple as when I attended the first in-person event with my wife, she was making about $3,500 a month. And having a vision cast of what would it be like if we could make $5,000 a month. And so my wife and I, we dreamed, we wrote stuff down on paper, and we made a goal of by the end of 2011, we want to make $5,000 a month, which was game-changing income for us back then. And then we reached that goal and we said, by the end of June of 2012, we want to be making $10,000 a month. And we reached that goal. And the way that we got there is we thought, mid to long range. But then we also said, okay, what do we need to do this month to get there? And as time has gone on, I've expanded it from just my business goals, but really to all of the different spokes on the wheel of life. I think it's Zig Ziglar who really talks about that. But I've applied it. And I think that you really have to have kind of some benchmarks for every single day. As well as weekly goals, monthly goals, but then also to think longer term out 1, 3, 5 years. Beyond 5 years, I think it's kind of a big, hairy, audacious goal, and who knows what's going to happen. I think 2020 was the perfect example of that. My wife and I had a lot of goals for 2020. We got thrown, like everyone, a major curveball, but also having some goals it gave us a foundation to go back to. And honestly, for us, 2020 ended up being a phenomenal year in many ways because of that foundation we had.
That's awesome. And you said you listened to Dave Ramsey, EntreLeadership, his podcast. What other books do you read or podcasts do you listen to that really help you maintain the right mindset?
So my two top favorite books, one is it's called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And he's an author and speaker that I got introduced by some friends. Honestly, that is, I think, the single most profound book that anyone could read, and absolutely love it. Basically talks about the concept that the little things we do every single day compound over time. the philosophy works with our health program, right? The hamburger you eat today isn't going to kill you. It's the hamburger that you eat every single day for 20 years that causes heart disease. But The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. And then the other book, this is a Christian author. His name is John Bevere, wrote this book called Relentless. But it is probably on par with Darren Hardy. I actually listen to both of these books. It's a new habit. Every January I reset by listening to these books again. And John Bevere just talks about, it's kind of an outside the box book for even a lifelong Christian like myself. But God used this book to really solidify the journey of adoption with our daughter when she was introduced to her. I mean, I had this incredible, almost not audible, but basically God said, first time I picked up Evelyn, I could tell God said, and this is probably going to freak out a bunch of your audience, but this is just the reality, and you can't argue with my reality. I picked her up and God said, Kevin, this is your daughter. Are you going to step up and be her dad? And it's hard for me to not get choked up thinking about it. She's been a huge blessing to me and our entire family and to so many others. But had I not read John Bevere's book, where he kind of talks about the fact that when God tells you to do something, just do it. It's the old work as if it all depends on you, pray as if it all depends on God. And it's the Israelites going from Egypt, crossing the Red Sea. They had to get there, and then God did miracles. And a lot of times people want to hang out in Egypt and wait for God to part the Red Sea ahead of time. And what I've learned through that book, and I've seen this play out in our business, is take those steps. Think about where you want to go. And when you're a person of faith, God will open up the doors when you get there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've heard it said another way that, when you get a focus and a vision of what you want, oftentimes the vehicle will show up to take you there.
Absolutely.
Which is a great way to say that. Okay, 2 more questions and then we're done. So this is a big one. You're on your deathbed. What do you want your friends, your family, your associates to say about Kevin Tinter?
Wow. I try to live with this in mind, and I fail on a daily basis. I want my kids to say I was a good dad. And I want everyone else to say, I made an impact and I cared about others.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Last question. How do people get in touch with you? If somebody wanted to reach out to you afterwards, tell you they love the podcast or learn more about your business and what you guys do, how do they reach you?
Well, I'm brand new to the Instagram world through my lovely wife, Becca. We actually just launched a new platform, Beck and Kev. So we have a website, beckandkev.com. You can check us out there on Instagram. We're Beck and Kev Tinter because someone stole the Beck and Kev. So Beck and Kev Tinter. And then on Facebook, we also are Beck and Kev.
And that's BEKANDKEV, just to make sure everybody gets that correct.
Exactly.
Kevin, so good to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being a part today and sharing your story.
Awesome, Trey. Thanks for the honor, man. I'm really grateful.
Thank you for joining us for another edition of Bathrooms and Bunkers, powered by Lean Solutions Group. And remember, excellence is in you.